Can't lift, can't shoot, can't even yell. What's she doing in a place like this? The words cut through the heat like a careless blade tossed by a young cadet as Evelyn Hart bent quietly to lift a crate of ammunition. Small, quiet, almost invisible. She moved like a ghost through the Redstone training grounds, present but never quite seen. Then it happened. Her chain slipped. A weathered dog tag tumbled from beneath her collar, clinking softly against the dirt. A visiting general old worn by wars paused mid-step, bent down, picked it up, his breath caught. Etched by hand, the numbers stared back at him like a whisper from the grave. Echo Ridge, 01999C. Who carved this? His voice trembled. A pause. Then Evelyn's voice, steady as the quiet before a storm. I did, sir. If the one you mocked turned out to be the reason you lived, would you ever see them the same? They called her too delicate for the dirt. The kind of woman who looked more at home in a clinic than a battlefield. Evelyn Hart, 29. Slender, composed, with pale eyes that rarely looked up, was the quiet shadow that drifted between drills. At Redstone, strength was measured in decibels and bruises. Evelyn carried neither. She didn't bark orders. She didn't run fastest. She didn't join in the competitive clamor that turned young cadets into something louder than fear. Instead, she cleaned her medical satchel each night with the same care a mother might fold a child's blanket. Her bunk always neat. Her voice, if heard at all, was soft like rain brushing canvas. Probably wandered in from nursing school, they joked. She never replied, which unsettled them more than if she had. Even when they rolled their eyes. Even when they muttered insults just loud enough. What unnerved them most wasn't that she was weak. It was that she never reacted. She endured with the stillness of someone used to being misunderstood. One evening, after a grueling 20-mile night op, when half the squad groaned in agony and the other half dragged their bodies to the showers, Evelyn stayed behind, kneeling in the shadows, patching a teammate's torn ankle with hands so precise it almost didn't hurt. No complaint, no spotlight, just quiet competence. Some started to wonder, was it luck, EMT background? Or something else she wasn't saying, an instructor once asked her during evaluations. Ever been deployed, Hart? Her eyes didn't flinch. Yes, sir, but the personnel file said otherwise. Whispers began threading through the barracks at night. She doesn't sleep much. She never panics during drills. She treats wounds like she's done it under real fire, but none of it stuck. They looked away when she passed because it was easier than wondering what she had survived. No one looked closer at the dog tag she wore tucked beneath her shirt. No one turned it over to see the hand-carved numbers on the back. Not yet, because the past she carried was the kind of truth no one expects to be standing beside them in silence. And the day that dog tag fell was the day everything they thought they knew would come undone. It was the kind of morning that burned quiet. The sun sat heavy above the Redstone training grounds, casting long shadows across the gravel. Dust clung to boots, brow's breath. Comprehensive Tactical Evaluation Day. A test designed to break bravado and expose what lay beneath. Evelyn was tucked into rear support, low risk, low regard. No one expected anything. They never did. She moved through the triage zone with silent precision, tending to mock wounds on writhing cadets who treated the exercise like a play. But Evelyn's hands moved like they remembered something real. A breath held too long. A wound that bled too fast. A name that never made it home. And then it happened. A cadet jolted, flailing for effect. His elbow caught the edge of her collar. The chain snapped. The dog tag fell. It landed with a sound that was far too soft for what it carried. 3 years earlier, Kaupind 1847. The ground was fire. The sky a scream. Evelyn's hands moved faster than thought, pressing, stitching, dragging. Around her, mortar fire cracked the earth open. A young soldier screamed for his mother. Another stopped screaming altogether. Blood soaked through gauze, then gloves, then silence. And Evelyn, barely able to breathe, etched numbers onto the inside lid of her kit. "Don't forget," she whispered. Don't forget who didn't make it. Back to present metal on dirt, a whisper in a room full of thunder. General Caleb Monroe had been walking past. He wasn't scheduled to be there, but fate is stubborn with its timing. He caught the glint of something familiar, something impossible. He stopped, bent, picked up the tag like it was sacred. At first, his expression was unreadable. Then came the silence. Then the tremble. He turned it over and read it aloud. Echo Ridge, 11999C, 1847. His voice lowered as if the numbers themselves had weight. Who carved this? The entire squad stopped. Even the wind seemed to lean in. I did? Sir Evelyn answered, standing still, her uniform dusted in red dirt. The general stared. You were at Ridge. She nodded. The name alone sent unease rippling through the rows. Echo Ridge was legend. A black site. A failed op whispered in cautionary tales. No survivors were ever confirmed. No names released. Only shadows and rumors. Until now. He looked around at the instructors, at the cadets who had rolled their eyes at her that very morning. She was there. He said, his voice brittle and reverent all at once. I saw her. In the rubble. She pulled me out when the fire hadn't yet stopped falling. The silence grew heavier than any command. I remember. Her hands, the general whispered. Steady, covered in blood, ash, and light. And those numbers, carved into the lid of her kit. She said she didn't want to forget where everything went wrong. Someone dropped their weapon. It thudded against the ground, unheeded. I thought she was gone, he said. I thought she didn't make it. Evelyn met his eyes without a word. She didn't need to speak. She had already said everything in silence and survival in the carved metal she still carried. But what no one at Redstone knew was that Echo Ridge wasn't the darkest thing she carried. One cadet, barely out of college, whispered to no one in particular. We laughed at her. And, for the first time, no one responded. The general turned to the lead instructor. His voice steadied but colder now. That op was classified. 17 men lost. 3 survived. She was one. And the only medic who didn't run when the air burned. The instructor fumbled with his tablet, pulling up files that no longer told the truth. Evelyn stood in the same spot. Still, small, unchanged. But the world around her was beginning to crack open. The wind had stilled. Even the distant thrum of drills, of cadence calls and shouted commands seemed to retreat as if the base itself knew something sacred had surfaced. The lead instructor took a cautious step forward, brow-furrowed, voice uncertain. Sir, her records show no combat experience, no deployment history, no special ops designation. General Monroe didn't look away from Evelyn. Of course they don't, he said quietly, because Echo Ridge was scrubbed from every system that mattered. His voice grew harder. We lost 17 that day. It was a mission that wasn't supposed to exist. Deep insertion. No backup, no extraction window, only ghosts and grit. He held the dog tag up. These numbers, they mark the grid where it all came apart. The hour the last chopper was shot down, and the medic kit that kept me breathing. Evelyn stood like a stone in the tide, unmoving. The cadets, one by one, began to shift. Not away from her, but toward her. Drawn not by noise, but by something quieter. Gravitas. The general exhaled slowly. When I woke up in the ruins of the evac point, the med tent was gone. Mortar fire had taken it all. Except her. She stayed. A pause stretched out long and bitter. She carried 2 men out through fire. Operated in a shelterless building using a flashlight and morphine drawn from half-melted vials. No sleep, no comms, no hope. He turned to the field. She saved 11 lives, confirmed. Not in reports, not in medals, in people, men who got to go home. Because she didn't. There was movement now. Small. A female cadet stepped forward. Lennox, the loudest one, the one who had called Evelyn a waste of uniform the week prior. Tears streaked down her face before she realized they were falling. I mocked you, she said hoarsely. I thought you didn't belong. We all did. Evelyn looked at her, not with vengeance, not with softness, but with a quiet that made the others turn inward. I'm not here to be remembered, she said. I'm here to make sure you don't hesitate when it's your turn. That landed heavier than any punishment. The general stepped beside her now, not in front, not above. Her hands saved lives while half of you were still in school, he said. The instructor, still pale, opened his mouth, then closed it. There were no protocols for this. I want Echo Ridge added to the training archive, Monroe said sharply. And this woman, his voice softened, now will lead the medical support unit going forward. Murmurs swirled. Disbelief, respect the echoes of misjudgment. The cadets who had once dismissed Evelyn now stared with the weight of realization that sometimes the quietest person in the room has already survived the worst kind of storm. And as the sun began to fall behind the watchtower, the silver tag still hung loose in Monroe's hand, etched not with glory, but memory. What none of them knew yet was what Evelyn had left behind at Echo Ridge, and what it still cost her every night to carry it. The training ground hadn't truly known silence until that moment. Not the kind shaped by reverence, not the kind that made grown cadets stand like statues uncertain where to look. General Monroe straightened. His boots shifted in the gravel. Then, slowly, with the precision of a soldier who still remembered how to honor the fallen, he raised his hand to his brow and gave Evelyn Hart a full, formal salute. A perfect salute. Not for rank, not for regulation, but for something older than both sacrifice. Gasps rippled like wind through dry leaves. He turned to the instructors. Effective immediately. Evelyn Hart is to be reassigned as the Medical Support Training Lead. All cadets will study Operation UYO119C, not as a myth, but as a measure of what this work truly demands. The instructors said nothing. Even bureaucracy knows when to stay out of the way. From the crowd, Cadet Lennox stepped forward again. Her hands trembled. I don't know how to make it right, she whispered. I judged you, mocked you. I thought Evelyn looked at her gaze steady as stone under water. I'm not here for apologies, she said. I'm here to make sure you're ready when it's your turn to decide who gets to live. Lennox broke tears falling freely now, not because she'd been reprimanded, but because she'd been seen and forgiven. A quiet murmur swept through the cadets. Not words, just a collective shifting like something inside them had tilted. A recognition that strength was not always loud, and courage wasn't always wrapped in muscle or noise. Later that evening, under a dim light in the officers' hall, the training commander approached Evelyn. His voice was low, almost reverent. We pulled every file, every name, every report. Your name wasn't there. You were written out. Evelyn nodded, eyes unfazed. I wasn't supposed to be remembered. That was the point. He hesitated. But why come back? Why train? Why here? She glanced toward the window where the wind bent a flag against the pole like a prayer too tired to stand upright. Because someone taught me, she said softly, that saving lives isn't about being remembered. It's about making sure the next person doesn't hesitate when it matters most. It's about making sure the next person doesn't hesitate when it matters most? She paused as if seeing something no one else could. There was a boy, 16, maybe 17. I held his hand while he bled out behind a shattered comms tent. I told him help was coming. It wasn't. She touched her tag. I carry him in these numbers. Every hesitation I don't let happen now is for him. The commander lowered his head not in shame, but in respect. That night, the cadets watched Evelyn from a distance as she walked the perimeter alone as always. But something had changed. Now they followed her not with their feet, but with their eyes. They listened not out of command, but out of belief. And far away from the noise in her bunk, tucked at the end of the barracks, a small journal lay open beside her gear. Inside, one line, kindness is not weakness. It's discipline in disguise. The final field deployment roster would be posted the next day. Evelyn's name sat at the top, but what none of them yet knew was what she would tell her new team the night before they left. Not from a podium, not from a script, but from a place deeper than fear, and that would change everything they thought they knew about war and about her, from the edge of what she had once survived. The morning after the deployment roster was posted, the base stirred with new rhythm. Nothing had been said aloud, but everyone moved differently as if a quiet current had passed through them in the night. Evelyn Hart's name was listed first. Beside it, Field Lead, Medical Support Unit Active Deployment. No fanfare, just black ink on white paper, but for those who understood, it might as well have been carved in stone. And yet, Evelyn hadn't changed. She still walked the perimeter alone, hands tucked behind her back, eyes scanning as if memory might rise from the soil. She still polished her shears and checked every pouch of gauze, every needle, as if the weight of each item mattered more than its name. She didn't speak of Echo Ridge. She didn't speak of herself, but in the silence around her something had grown respect rooted not in authority, but in awe. They say true leadership is quiet, that it doesn't announce itself, it listens. And when it speaks like water meeting fire. That's how she gathered her team the night before deployment. No speech, no directives, no ceremony. Just a circle under a dull light, the smell of oil and canvas in the air. 6 medics sat with her, all young, all wide-eyed, none yet broken. Evelyn looked at them not as subordinates, but as something far more sacred, carriers of futures. Her voice was calm, but not soft. Each word felt chosen from a deeper place. "I won't lie to you," she said. "Out there, people die. Good people, people who mean something to someone." The room held stillness, not fear. She continued, eyes steady. "Your job isn't to save everyone. Your job is to know without flinching who can be saved and not let doubt steal that second from you." A young woman in the back, barely 20, lifted her hand like it might break. "Ma'am, how do you stay calm when it starts to fall apart?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. She looked at her palms quietly, then back at them. Because panic never saved a life, and rage never healed a wound, and fear never brought anyone home. She touched her dog tag still worn close to her chest. "These numbers remind me that there's a cost to every moment we hesitate, every hand we let slip." Then she looked around the room at every face, every breath held in silent reverence. "Out there, it won't matter how loud you are. It won't matter how many drills you passed. What matters is whether your hands can stay steady when everything else breaks." She stood. The others did too, without being told, and as they moved to gather gear and shoulder packs one by one, each paused beside her, not to speak, but to nod small quiet gestures of something unspoken trust. Before dawn, they departed. The base watched them go, but it was Evelyn they watched longest, her figure vanishing into the light like a shadow choosing to carry the sun. What no one yet knew was what would return. 6 months later, the transport rolled back through the Redstone gates, wheels heavy with dust, windows silent. And every name on Evelyn Hart's roster, every single one, returned home. There were no welcome banners, no brass bands or speeches, only families waiting with eyes that hadn't slept. And a woman who stood slightly apart, arms folded, dog tag, tucked beneath a now faded uniform. She didn't step forward when the commander offered recognition. She simply helped unload the gear, checked each medic's vitals, counted them one by one like she'd been holding her breath for months, and could finally exhale. Later, in the quiet of the base medical wing, someone framed her dog tag, not for decoration, but as a quiet standard etched not with medals, but memory. 0119C, Ridge. The moment everything changed. Evelyn left behind no slogan, no motto, just a handwritten note in the journal by her bunk. Being gentle isn't weakness. It's how I choose not to become what once tried to break me. To this day, her story isn't told in textbooks. But every new medic at Redstone is handed a photo of that tag, and told if you can hold steady like she did, you'll send someone home who wouldn't have made it otherwise, because some heroes don't wear thunder. They walk with quiet steps, carry other people's pain in silence, and leave the world softer than they found it. So, if you've ever been called too kind, too quiet, too soft for this world, remember Evelyn Hart, and the lives she carried through fire with nothing but her hands and her will not to let go. If someone once showed you quiet strength when you needed it most, share this story. Someone out there is still carrying a name they never got to thank.